21 years old and I've made probably over 500,000.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Okay, so you can't get licensed till you're 18. So I'm assuming you started real estate then. What was the process of getting in?
So, I'll backtrack even further before that. I was in college, kind of just coasting, doing my thing. And, after a couple weeks of university, I realized that it's not what I wanted to do. I joined a fraternity, and don't get me wrong, that was a lot of fun. But when I saw the true colors, a lot of these guys, like they had no ambition and it just didn't align with what I wanted. And here's an example. I went over to one of the frat houses, and when I got there, I saw a guy was still sleeping. It was 12 p.m. during the day. He was still sleeping. And he gets up. First thing he does, he hits his jewel, and then he lights the bong.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yep.
And dude, right after I saw that, I was like, I am in the wrong place
Yeah.
because I knew those habits didn't line up with where I wanted to go. And so that was the first sign. I was like, okay, well, clearly the frat's not for me. What if I just decided to just go all in on school? And so, I was started to think that way. And I asked myself, okay, well, where would I be 4 years from now if I did that? I'd graduate, I'd have a degree, and then I'd be working under a boss making, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 grand a year if I'm lucky. And what really bothered me about that is not the fact that I was working under a boss. Well, that too, but it was more so the fact that I know an extremely hard worker. Any room I walk into, I automatically believe I'm the hardest worker in that room. And if I'm in a job and I'm making $70,000 a year and someone who's not working half as hard as me is making the same or more, I'm going to be pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
And
I feel that,
so
man.
right when that realization hit me, I realized that I need to become an entrepreneur or I need to get into an industry that's going to pay me based on the effort I put into it. And I started brainstorming and thinking. I was like, well, what can I do? Well, sales. Well, what should I sell? And I thought of real estate. It's a high ticket sale. And I can sell as many houses as I want in a year and not be capped by my income. So to an extent. And that's what I decided to do. So I came home that day and I told my parents, who are immigrants, keep in mind, they're immigrants, they value college and education a ton, and they have the best intentions for me. But as soon as I talked to them and I told them I wanted to drop out of college, I got instant pushback. Instant pushback. They told me, Ari, you're not going to be successful without a degree. No one's going to respect you. You're not going to make any money. And I told them, well, what if I just got into real estate? And they said, listen, everyone has a realtor in their family. Why would they use an 18-year-old kid who just got licensed? And I said, Mom, Dad, don't worry, I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. And we had these conversations for the span of a couple months. And every single time the conversation would end in an argument. Big argument. No one supported my goals. No one. And what ended up happening is I said, screw this. I've got to do my own thing because if I don't have my own plan, I'm going to be part of someone else's. And I'm going to wake up at 30 years old, at 40 years old, and I'm going to envy that person who just took the risk and dropped out and now is making a lot of money while I'm working my 9 to 5. I didn't want to be the envious person. And so I knew I had to take that risk to be able to let myself out of that trap. And so I ended up saying, screw this. And so I had 6 college classes. And then I would go to the library and I'd study for those classes. And on top of that, I'd study for my real estate exam. Fast forward to the end of the semester, I passed my school licensing and I got my exam and I dropped out of college. I said, screw it. My mom said, you know what, fine, I'll support you. But I'll tell you this, if you're going to drop out, at least take 1 to 2 classes a semester while you're doing real estate as a backup option. And I told my mom this. I said, Mom, if I have a plan B, I'm going to end up falling back on my plan B. That's what most people do. That's mostly what happens. My plan B should be to make my plan A work, or else I'm not going to have a plan B. And so I said, screw that. I'm going all in. I'm burning the bridges and I'm going all in. And so that's what I did. And the first few months were a struggle. It was rough. I was in my room alone. This room that I'm actually in right now, in my room alone, cold calling. And I was just
Really?
getting 5 hours a day, dude. 5 hours a day, hitting the phones. cold calling, rejection, rejection, rejection. No one wanted to work with me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know tonality. I didn't know scripts. I would watch YouTube videos to get my education from, and that didn't work.
Yeah. Okay. Why'd you choose cold calling as your method of lead gen? And who were you cold calling, by the way?
So I was calling for sale by owners.
Okay.
That the reason I was doing that is because I was broke. I didn't have any money on, I couldn't buy leads. I couldn't spend data. So if you
Right.
really think about it, real estate, most people who are super successful at real estate, they have a very strong network. They're typically in their 30s, 40s, 50s, sometimes 60s, and they just know a lot of people who want to buy and sell real estate. Being fresh out the gate at 18 years old, I didn't know a single person who was thinking about buying and selling real estate. And so I also didn't have enough money for leads. So the only other option I had was to call people and see if they would do business with me. And that's what I did.
Dude, that's a tough entryway, man. Very tough. What city or what state are you in, by the way?
I'm in Arizona.
Arizona? Okay, what's the major brokerages out there?
Russ Line Sotheby's launch, EXP Realty, Keller Williams.
Okay, and the brokerage you joined, they didn't give you any support or what was going on?
So at the time, I joined this company called Deluxe Realty, and they're really good brokerage, super nice people. But it's one of those brokerages where you sell a house and you keep the whole pie, which that's the great part about it. But typically, those brokerages don't really offer as much support to
Yeah,
agents. They don't offer anything really. They just
no,
offer a place to hang your license and low fees.
right.
And so the reason I actually joined that brokerage to begin with is because my mom's been in the business for almost 20 years. And she's like, hey, join and I'll teach you what I know. And granted, my mom is successful at what she does, but it kind of circles back to what I was saying earlier, is the people who have been in the business for a long time and have a strong sphere and referral network. Those are the people who prosper. And so although my mother was very good at what she does, she has never prospected. She never picked up the phone and dialed. She never did open houses for leads. She never door knocked. It was just people she knew, family, friends.
100%.
And so after a month or so, I realized like I can't really learn much from her. I can learn how to transact. I can learn how to do the contracts, but the most important part I couldn't learn, and that was to find business and to learn how to hunt for my own food. And so, at that point in time, I decided I needed to find a mentor, because that's the most important thing. Find someone who's doing what you want to do at a high level and replicate it. And so what I did is I didn't know any mentors, by the way. Like I didn't know anyone. And so I was just like, you know what? How do I meet real estate agents who are succeeding? And so I pulled up open houses on Zillow in Scottsdale, and I saw an $800,000 open house, and I said, I'm going to it. I literally got in my car, drove over there, and I met this one lady who was holding the open house, and I was just this 18-year-old who barely knew anything about real estate, fresh into the game. And I approached her. I'm like, hey, I'm just curious, like, how'd you get this listing? And she's like, my company trained me and like they helped me get it. I was like, your company like trained you? And she's like, yeah, like, yeah, they trained me. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty cool concept. And so I
Yeah.
grabbed her car. I went back home and I said, you know what? I'm going to call for sale by owners for 2 more weeks. And if it doesn't work out, I'll give this company a call. So didn't work out. So I ended up giving the company a call. And as I get on the phone with the hiring director, I told her, hey, I'm fresh into the business. I want to possibly join you guys and see, if we can partner up. And she told me, sorry, we don't hire new people. And right when I heard that, I pushed. I'm like, oh, well, I'm not that new, my mom's been in the business for 20 years. Like I know what I'm doing. Like
I
I'm pretty
basically got
seasoned.
20 years of experience.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of pushed. Like she knew I didn't know anything at the time, but she appreciated my persistence. And so she's like, you know what, just come in for an interview. Fine. And so I came in for an interview, and she ended up really resonating with me. She clicked, and she's like, you know what, I'm going to refer you to, one of the top teams in the company. You should go chat with them and see if you're a good fit for that team. And so I did. And, that team and I had similar values. We ended up clicking. And from there on, I ended up still doing what I was doing every single day, calling. But this time I was actually able to pair it with the right scripts and the right training. And once I was able to pair my hard work ethic with the right training, that's when I saw an amazing amount of success. Not only that, I was working about 12 to 14 hours a day, and most of my work was just shadowing people. I spent hours, I would literally drive an hour to a listing appointment just to learn what someone was doing. I'd go for free, I'd work for free just to see what people who were succeeding were doing. And I learned everything from them. Everything. I was like a sponge soaking information. And so that was super, super helpful and super powerful to be able to replicate people and see what they're doing. And so I took the best bits of every salesperson in that company and I compiled it into my own little formula of what fit me. And within the first week at that company, I had signed my first listing. It was a for sale by owner. Called him up, went out there, signed it, and sold it. And I made my first check, and I think that was 10 grand. And so I got my first taste of money, and it only made me hungrier. And so after that, I kept calling, kept selling. And by the end of the year, I had done $20 million in sales and I sold 45 units.
That's so impressive, man. And how old were you at the time?
18 to 19.
That is amazing. Good for you, bro. That's crazy. And it shows you how important being in the right environment is because
Yeah.
you can be a superstar and you probably would have figured it out, but it might have taken you an extra 3, 4, 5 years maybe. But then you
Yeah.
put yourself in that right environment, you found the right mentors, you got the right scripts, you got the right training, and it took you a week.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
it's so crazy. Okay.
Environment's everything, man. I'm such a huge proponent and believer in that. So yeah.
100%. Okay, so what was your script? What was your for sale by owner script?
So, at the time it was a little bit different just because the market, it was very hot. And so it was very it was a lot easier to get in the door compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
Um, but at the time, I just played the logic game with them. I was just like, listen, you want 500,000 for your home. What if I can get you that net? I'll throw my commission on top and I'll make it happen. And then essentially, it was a lot deeper than that, but that's what it was. I can't remember to the T what it was 3 years ago, especially since I don't really call for sale by owners anymore.
Okay.
Uh, I steered away from that path just because they're typically a lot more stingier when it comes to commission.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the whole reason they're listed without an agent. They want to save money. Totally understandable. That's their choice. Do I want to work with someone who's gonna, nickel and dime me on every corner? No. So I switched my avatar in regards to who I target, and now I target expired and canceled listings. Essentially, what that means for all the people who aren't in the real estate space, that's it's a listing that was on the market for X amount of time with an agent, and it came off the market. It either expired or the seller canceled the contract. It could have been because the market was tough; they couldn't get the home sold. Maybe the price was too high. Maybe the agent just wasn't marketing the home correctly, and I call those leads.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. And what that seems like a kind of a difficult niche to be in because if that house didn't sell, I mean, there's typically a good reason for it, especially in America today. I mean, shit's just flying off the market. So
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a difficult niche, not only because the house is a little bit more difficult to sell, but also because of the amount of competition. So
yeah.
I'm not the only clever one. I mean, there's hundreds of agents who are calling these leads. And so how do you differentiate yourself from hundreds of realtors who are just hungry? It's like if someone threw a worm into a pond, you're gonna see like 100 fish swarm that worm. Like that's the same concept. Like that lead is the worm. And there's only about maybe 20 to 40 of those leads a day that come off the market. And most of them really don't want to sell anymore. They change their mind.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself, right? And that's something that took me a lot of hours and time and blood, sweat, and tears to learn. But I've created a framework around it. And this framework, I only give access to my team. I really I keep it private because of the amount of power it holds. But for the sake of the Sales Bros podcast, I'm gonna release some of the sauce here.
Let's go. Let's
And
hear it.
so So as everyone knows, sales, it's all psychology, and people buy on emotion and they justify it with logic. And so that's kind of what I built my script around. It's making them feel heard. It's making them feel that their house really should have sold, which every house should sell. There's a buyer for every house out there. Um, and it's asking the right questions to elicit that emotion. And so this is how it goes. It starts with the intro. Once we introduce ourselves, then we figure out the problem. We want to get straight to the problem, and sometimes the prospect won't necessarily know there's a problem. And so you have to identify it for them a lot of the times,
Mm,
right? And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. Sometimes they'll say, "Oh yeah, it was the market, that's why it didn't sell. We're going to relist in a year when the market's better." Or we're going to relist when the interest rates come down. So that isn't a true problem you can overcome as of right now because the market's out of our control. And so in that case, you need to identify the problem. And so I try to steer them away from market-based thinking to agent-based thinking. Because what was the agent doing that possibly prevented the home from selling? Because, like I said earlier, every home has a buyer for it. A lot of the times, it's just a matter of price or a matter of how the house is actually being marketed online. And so, intro, identify the problem. Then you give them some confidence that it should have sold. And after the confidence, you find the motivation. Because a lot of people make this mistake is they do the intro and then they go into the motivation. But this prospect's gonna hang up on you right away if you're just saying, hey, this is Ari with eXp Realty. That house over there, why did you want to sell it? They're gonna say, who are you? Why do you care? And stop calling me. Right. And so before we can go into the motivation, we need to identify the problem, let them know that we can overcome that problem and give them confidence their home should have sold. Now they're a lot more open to talking to us. Then we go into the motivation. Hey, you've got a beautiful home. Can I ask you why even sell it in the first place? Why not just rent it out? Right? Find out their motivation. Why do we find out their motivation? So we can tie it in with the close. Because you can't really close someone as well if you don't have their motivation to throw back at them to remind them as to why they even started this in the first place. So motivation, after the motivation, we go to the pre-close. And what that essentially is I'm teeing them up for the yes. And how I do that is I take their goal, and that's selling the property, and their motivation, I tie it together and I get them to agree that they still want to do that. So something like that would look like, hey, Jamil, it sounds like if this sale made financial sense to you and you can get over to Iowa to be closer with your family, you'd still do that, right?
yeah, I probably would.
You would. Okay, great. Now I go into the close. Great, Jamil. So before we make any decisions, what I can do for you is I can just stop by for about 15 minutes. I can show you exactly why your property didn't sell and how homes in this market and how we're getting homes sold every single day in this market. What's a good time for you today?
Perfect, dude. Let's do it at 3.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the structure, and throughout the framework I have a bunch of questions within that framework because I don't really believe in scripts. I more so believe in question asking. That's super
Right.
important.
So you're trying to find like their dominant selling motive. You're trying to find like that as soon as possible, find that pain, find that real pain, and then how deep are you probing? Like, are you asking surface level questions, or are you being like, listen, like, why do you need the money right now? Why do you need to move? What's the real pain? How long have you guys felt this? Like, how deep are you digging there?
So I dig deep enough to where I can just get in front of them. As long as they agree to an appointment, I'm happy because when I get to the appointment, that's when I can dig deep.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you this, I've been on a lot of listing, I've been on hundreds, and there hasn't been a single person who said, get out of my house. Yes, too deep of a question. But
Yeah.
over the phone, if you ask too deep of a question, they're gonna be like, why does that matter? And they'll hang up on you,
Mm,
depending on how you ask the question. And so my whole goal over the phone, I just want to get in the door. And when I'm in the door, I'm probing heavy and I'm going into the true motivation and
okay.
really finding out if they're a serious prospect or not. So back to what you were saying, yeah, the goal is to just get the appointment over the phone and make sure that they're somewhat realistic on price.
Okay. And is that your primary method of lead gen still? Like your just phones and that's how you're getting leads right now?
So that's one of my lead generation methods. I always believe in having, a couple,
Yeah.
just because you never know if one can go dry. And so obviously I do expireds. I also started Google pay-per-click recently. And essentially what that is my website is being marketed online. So if someone is searching up homes for sale in Scottsdale, my website will come up. And if they want to look at homes, they'll have to punch in their information. Now my team gets that lead and we call those leads. And so we have our seller campaigns. We also have our buyer campaigns, which is what I just told you about. And then on top of that, I also do realtor.com leads. So
Okay.
I create a partnership with realtor.com to where, I pay them X amount of dollars per lead. And so that's been quite fruitful as well.
Really? Okay. Because I've heard realtor.com leads are dog shit. How are they?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the agent skill level,
Yeah,
You have to know what you're doing. You have to be a very good salesperson to make it work because
sure.
those are also competitive. Not as competitive as expireds, but they're still competitive and there's going to be some you just can't close and others you can, and I've learned that the most successful people have a a mass amount of leads coming in. They have a lot of volume because if you just buy 10 leads a month and you don't close any, you can't beat yourself up for that. Maybe you just haven't had enough right cards come through the deck. So
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, sales is 100% a skill game, but it's also a numbers game. If you don't have enough numbers to work with, you can't even show the skill, you
yeah,
know?
no, I mean I totally agree. And
Yeah.
one of the guys I look up to quite a bit is Jeremy Miner.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's taught me a lot when it comes to sales. He actually goes to my gym, which is funny.
No way.
Um, yeah, small world.
Yeah.
But he always talks about how sales is not a numbers game because he
Yeah.
he gives the analogy. He's like, if Steph Curry was shooting free throws and he was only making like 10% of them, he wouldn't be in the NBA. Just
100%. Yeah.
just like us salespeople,
Yeah.
if we have like a 5 or 10% conversion rate, obviously depending on your industry,
Yeah.
some industries that would suffice and others not. But my point is we always have to be tuning up our skills, just like basketball players are spending hours and hours a day just practicing outside of the games, and then they do their warm ups on top of that. And so that's how I operate my team that I started is we meet every day at 9 in the morning over Zoom, and we first start with our warm ups. We role play
Yeah.
that script we just went through. We role play that over and over again, and then once we feel comfortable, we dive into the calls.
For sure.
So.
For sure. 100%. Well, I think one of the things that's very little talked about in sales too. I mean, you hear about the numbers game all the time, but the way that you improve the skill is by the numbers. And the more numbers you do, the less numbers you'll have to do in the future to get the same results. That
So
skill keeps rising and rising and rising. So yeah,
so
100%. And I love the fact that you're role playing with your team every day because, dude, I mean, without it's like the military. The military trains like 80% of their lives to go fight 20%. And we think just because we're not in something that serious that we don't have to have the same level of training, but it's really the exact same thing. I mean, if we want to keep improving, the practice has to be on point every single day.
without a doubt, man, the moment someone's ego gets too high is the moment they stop learning.
Facts. Absolutely.
There's always someone who knows more.
Yeah.
There's always going to be someone who's ahead, who has more money, who's further in life. And so, as long as you can acknowledge that and still have an open mind to learn from other people and not let your ego get above you, that's the person who's going to constantly evolve. It could take 10 years, it could take 20, it could take 2 years. But as long as they're open-minded and willing to learn and be coachable, they're gonna reap the fruits of that. So that's what I believe.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I think you can train anybody to do anything. I mean, it's all about just having that right mindset. As soon as somebody closes off, like you're saying, it's a wrap. They're never going to be a fit.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've seen it too much, man, where people get into this business and after 6 months or after a year, they're dropping like flies. It's a lack of commitment and not being coachable enough. They're afraid to ask for help. When I,
100%.
I mean, when I first got in the industry, I was asking question after question after question. And not only was I asking questions, I would apply it. Like I had the CEO of the company, he had a training video for all the people in the company as to exactly how he would conduct a listing presentation when at a at a prospect's house. And that video was about 30 something minutes long. And I sat there, I watched the video, and I wrote down every single word he was saying so I can memorize it. Every single word of that 32-minute video was written down in my notebook. I still have the notebook to this day. And I wrote it down and I would practice saying it. I wrote it down, I was practice saying it, and then I'd get my phone up and I'd record myself role playing it as if I was talking to the seller, because none of those other sales reps, dude, none of them wanted to practice with me. They were all lazy. They wanted to go clock out at 4 or 5 o'clock. I was there till 8 to 9 p.m. But I was just there by myself practicing the presentation until I got it down to a T. And the reason why I did that is because I have urgency. The most successful people, they have such a strong level of urgency that they know they cannot waste a minute of their time. They know that they have to be successful right away. It's going to be a process, but they don't waste time because that's wasting potential.
100%, dude. Dude, I have a theory that you can judge how successful a sales rep is by how long their lunch break is.
So true. So
I,
true, man.
I swear to God. Listen, like, dude, I've seen agents that have like taken literally. I mean, first of all, in real estate, there's so many people that just don't come to the office at all,
Go.
ever. Like, so I mean, I saw that a lot, but I mean, in like the other sales positions I've had, I mean, you see the guys that are taking the full hour, maybe even more, and they're showing up late to their sales presentations afterwards. And then you see the guys that bring a sandwich from home and they eat at their desk. And it's a direct correlation in the numbers at the end of the month. Every single time. Every single time. I've never been wrong about this.
It's 100% true. And I think that even goes outside of sales. You
Yeah.
can tell if someone is wealthy or successful just based on how they spend their time.
Right.
It's so true. You look at what they're doing, and if they're wasting time on nonsense, you can automatically weed them out. You just know, because a true businessman, a true hustler, someone who is succeeding at a high level, they're not wasting their time on anything because they know that is their most valuable asset. They don't play video games, they don't watch Netflix, they don't go to clubs. Like, I don't do any of that because I know I'm not at that level yet where I'm flying private jets and I'm ultra successful, but I know if I want to get there, I have to embody that person now. Not just the way he looks or the way he talks, but his habits. I have to embody every aspect of that person I want to be, so then I can eventually become that person. And so the moment you change your identity is the moment where you can become what you want. Like, the reality will just catch up with you in a matter of time.
100%. 100%, man. Yeah, dude, you're spitting bars there. I love it. Well, here, Ari, let's transition a little bit, go back into some of the nitty-gritty on sales. We're running out of time here. So looks like we have 10 minutes. So two things I want to cover with you. One, your follow-up process after the presentation, what you guys are doing to actually, recover those, because they say that almost, I want to say the percentages, 80% of deals are closed in the follow-up, not on the first close. So I want to hear about that. And then actually, we'll save the second question for later. So now,
Right.
what's your current follow-up
Amazing.
process? Yeah.
So I love that you say that 80% of the deals are, done with the follow-up, because that is so true. It cannot be more true, because when I meet with the seller, a lot of the times they say, you know what, I'm not ready. I want to talk to my wife, or I want to do XYZ. And you know what? A lot of salespeople object that. They try to find an objection around the I need to talk to my wife. And don't get me wrong, there's times where that is necessary. You have to feel the prospect out. And if you really feel like that's a screen wall, then pry and find out the true motivation, right? But if you genuinely feel like you gave you did your absolute best on that presentation, there was nothing you would change, and they resonated with you, do not be pressured. Like, I am so low pressure, and that's why I sell at such a high rate, because they feel comfortable around me. The moment you start making them feel like they're getting sold is the moment they don't want to do business with you.
Mhm.
And so I let them, I'm like, hey, no problem at all. Take your time. Here's what I'll do for you. What's a good time I can circle back with you? Blah, 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 blah. And I everything I tell them I'm gonna send them, I send them. We have to be impeccable with our words as salespeople. We say it, we do it. Because the moment we say something and we don't do it, they feel that, and they're like, well, he's not reliable.
Mhm.
Especially if it's a luxury client. They see through that shit. So my follow-up process, looks like this. I think I don't have a specific process, but what I do is I use a very robust CRM called Sierra Interactive. And so I put all my leads in there. I set tasks to follow up when I need to. I update the notes. And then I just circle back with them. When I told them I would circle back with them, that's it. And I provide them with value. Hey, here's your updated home value. Or did you see that property that just came up on the market for sale? Any conversation I'm having when it's a follow-up, it has intention. It has something I can connect to get them to remember me or to like me. Whether it's bringing up a family member or, like I said, letting them know about a new house for sale. So that's been pretty helpful there.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And I guess the last question I have from here is, where do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
That's a great question. I see myself in 10 years from now more so in the coaching space. I think I have a lot more passion around helping other people level up. I think I just find more fulfillment in that. And I genuinely feel that's the reason I started a team. But I also want to be able to do what I love on a bigger scale. And so if I can help agents do what I did and achieve X amount of results and the 3 years I've been able to do it, regardless of the age or regardless of how young I look, I think I can change a lot of lives. And so realistically, that's the vision, is have a crazy coaching program and change realtors' lives, which will in essence change the consumer's life.